time passes differently in the TVA. Don't miss a moment of Marvel Studios' Loki on Disney+.
Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my brand new Loki trailer video. Tom Hiddleston also recently talked about what's actually going on in the series, revealed a bunch of details about the story that we didn't know before, so I'll break all that stuff down. Because Tom Hiddleston recently confirmed some of my theories about what's actually going on, who the actual main villain of the series is going to be, and what's happening with some of these other versions of Loki from alternate realities. Also, because we just got that Eternals trailer, and they're telling the origin of the MCU, so to speak, in a very cosmic sense, I'll talk about the connection between the Asgardians like Thor, Odin, Loki, and the Eternals characters. Because Odin knows about all of this stuff that's going on with the Celestials, eternity, the larger cosmic concept, so he knows all about the Eternals. But in the new Loki trailer, you see him hopping around time and space, Doctor Who style. If it wasn't clear, they aren't just traveling to alternate universes of the multiverse. They're also traveling to the past, present, and future of the MCU inside these alternate realities. But here's what Tom Hiddleston just said about the overall twist of the Time Variance Authority. He said, if you've done something to alter history or alter the course of the future, according to the TVA, you get pulled into their headquarters and processed as a time criminal, as you see Loki get hauled in at the beginning of all the trailers. Then he goes on to say, you could have literally done anything. The TVA is an organization that orders and polices the passage of time. They have predetermined what happens in the past, present, and future in a straight line. And if you do anything that deviates from that or creates an alternate branch of reality, you get hauled into the TVA and charged with crimes against the timeline, and you're a time prisoner. It will come as a surprise to no one that Loki is one of those time criminals. Tom Hiddleston talking about this variant version of Loki here, the main Loki on the series. Then the director of the series added to that by saying, with Loki taking the Tesseract, fans will see exactly what that action means and what bigger ripple he's made in time doing that. It causes him to be more reflective about his actions and why he's done what he's done. So what Tom Hiddleston is clarifying is the Time Variance Authority predetermines the future of the MCU. They decide what happens in the future as if there's no chance of true free will. Like if anyone deviates from the Timekeeper's predetermined course, that's when they get hauled into the time prison in their citadel. Or they get erased from existence like the person does hilariously in the Q line here. And as he also clarifies, you don't have to have committed a serious infraction against their plan for the future. It can literally be anything as simple as just choosing not to do something that the timekeepers had preordained that you were supposed to do on a particular day. Like you turn left when you should have turned right. And I feel like this just confirms some of my theories about who the real villains of the series are supposed to be. It's another WandaVision situation where on WandaVision, yes, Agatha Harkness was kind of the antagonist for a lot of the series, but really it was Tyler Hayward, who's in charge of SWORD, comes off as more of the mustache-twirling traditional villain. Like a situation where the inmates are running the asylum. So even if the Timekeepers themselves aren't super evil, the Time Variance Authority, just like SWORD, will probably wind up coming off as more of a villain than most of the alternate versions of Loki in these other universes, the other timelines. And while some of them do seem pretty terrible, I think that's all meant to be a big misdirect. They kind of did that on WandaVision too, where they want you to think that Scarlet Witch might be the villain, at least in the first couple of episodes, like, oh no, she's the one that's orchestrating all these people's lives, using them like puppets to her own whims. But really, by the end of the series, you find out that wasn't exactly the case. So for example, in the clip where Loki is getting hauled into the time theater and Owen Wilson's character Mobius is getting ready to show him the highlight reel of his life, like basically show him a rewatch of all the Marvel movies. Even though it's written to be a funny scene, he's actually telling the truth. That's the real comedy there, is that Loki is not wrong when he's talking about the quote-unquote time lizards, how ridiculous this all is, orchestrating the lives of trillions of people across the timeline to their own whims.
So you're part of the TVA's courageous and dedicated workforce?
Yes.
You were created by the Timekeepers?
Yep.
To protect the sacred timeline?
Correct. Is that funny?
The idea that your little club decides the fate of trillions of people across all of existence at the behest of 3 space lizards, yes, it's funny. It's absurd.
And here's even more evidence to back that up. The showrunner, Michael Waldron, recently talked about some of the main inspirations for how they wrote the story. I've already talked about how he came from the Rick and Morty TV shows, so I've already talked about some of the creative energy that they borrowed from Rick and Morty. But he also said that one of the major influences for the way they wrote the episodes and the characters was Blade Runner. and that it was Owen Wilson's character, Mobius, who's supposed to be like their version of Deckard, the hard-boiled detective working inside the system, who's very nonplussed by all this sci-fi craziness and situations they get themselves into. Like, Loki's trying to outfox him here, and he's just completely unimpressed. And as you probably guessed, all the different versions of Loki, all the variants, are supposed to be like the replicants that they're hunting down and killing, or terminating, if you want to make the Blade Runner reference a little more on the nose, because the replicants were more like living machines. But who is the actual main villain of the Blade Runner movie? Yes, Roy Batty, the leader of the replicants, is kind of the antagonist, but at the end of the movie, you wind up completely sympathizing with him. He just wants to live. That iconic speech of his, Tears in the Rain. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched C-beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die. It's all about the wondrous things he's seen, learned, experienced that are all going to be lost because he's about to die. Also, fun connection to WandaVision again. They had a Blade Runner Easter egg during the WandaVision finale for the Tannhauser Gate on the marquee for the Westview movie theater, and it was meant to be a reference to Hex Vision, this version of Vision, getting ready to die when Scarlet Witch took down the Hex, his own version of Tears in the Rain. So you have to imagine that all these alternate Lokis, the variants they're calling them, have their own Tears in the Rain kind of moments, all of them just wanting to live, and some of them are probably not all that bad. But in Blade Runner, in that scenario, it's kind of like the Tyrell Corporation and the police that wind up coming off as more of the villains, because they're using these living machines like slaves in this futuristic society when they've achieved consciousness, so they kind of evolve to the point where they become this whole new race of people. But Tyrell, the police, don't really view them as anything more than machines. Just like it sounds like the Timekeepers and the Time Variance Authority don't really care about all these variants. And that's just these Lokis. They do this all over the timeline for trillions of people. They'll get rid of anything that does not adhere to their very strict plan for the future. In my other Loki videos, I've also made Hitchhiker's Guide and Doctor Who references to them portraying the TVA like the worst kind of bureaucrats you could think of, like the Time Lords on Doctor Who are the worst bureaucrats you could think of, or to be more on the nose, the Citadel of Ricks on Rick and Morty, which are now very literally being run by evil Morty. So the main Rick, C-137 Rick, thought they were terrible to begin with. Now they're more overtly terrible. So early theory, they do wind up getting rid of some of these alternate Lokis, the genuinely bad ones, but since it seems like they're trying to hype up Lady Loki or female Loki here, whatever you want to call her, she'll end the series in the most Loki way possible by faking her own death. And our variant Loki will wind up sympathizing with a lot of these alternate versions. Even he himself is a variant, or to make another Blade Runner reference, he is one of the replicants himself. But it seems like maybe they do have bigger plans for female Loki, Lady Loki in future seasons like Loki Season 2 or some other Marvel movie or Disney Plus series. Maybe she'd come back. Like, I don't think they'll wind up killing off every single one of these alternate Lokis. An early theory is, though, that over the course of Season 1, this Loki, our main version of Loki, and Owen Wilson's Mobius character will uncover shadier things going on inside the Time Variance Authority. Like, things inside the TVA will only get worse before they get better, and they'll use the ending of Season 1 to sort of set up a larger mystery within the TVA that they'll deal with in a Season 2 plot when that winds up happening. They did confirm that there will be a Season 2. Like, the main plot of Season 1, pretty simple. Loki breaks the timeline by stealing the Infinity Stone, the Space Stone, creates a bunch of branch timelines that they have to close down. But usually what you do with series like this, or even to make another Rick and Morty reference, is you get more meta with future seasons. The Season 2 plot gets more meta in that it digs more into the inner workings of the TVA and what's really going on with the Timekeepers. Like, I don't think we're going to learn everything about the Timekeepers in the MCU during Season 1. And they'll sort of spin that mystery up as it becomes more of a lead-in for Kang the Conqueror crossover type stories, connections to that character in the future, in the way he's manipulating the timeline. Because if the TVA themselves wind up being kind of villainous themselves, even if it's only indirectly, then it would be an easy way to portray Kang the Conqueror of the MCU as more of an anti-hero type of character, or at least more of a complex villain. Like, he's a powerful character who doesn't agree with the Timekeepers' plan for the future, which is actually accurate to the comics. That is sort of his relationship with them in the comics. For example, in the comics, one of the reasons why he spends so much time manipulating alternate timelines is because alternate versions of his son and his love interest, Ravonna Renslayer, being played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw during the Loki series, they wind up dying, so he winds up searching the multiverse for versions of them that are still alive, using time travel to try and bring them back. It's kind of like what the Avengers did during Avengers Endgame. They used time travel to try and bring everyone back, but they did so in a way that didn't completely break the timeline, which is why the Time Variance Authority didn't haul them in. but someone like Kang the Conqueror would be #1 on the TVA's most wanted list. And it's just a simple way to make Kang a more sympathetic villain, so you at least understand why he's doing all these crazy things with time travel when he shows up during Ant-Man 3 Quantumania. In the same way that you understand why Thanos wanted to assemble the Infinity Gauntlet, because he saw a problem with overpopulation, but he's a villain because only a psychopath would willingly kill trillions of people, half the universe, with the snap of his fingers. That actually kind of makes the Timekeepers seem a little bit like Thanos-type figures, predetermining the lives of trillions of people across the timeline, orchestrating their lives as if they have the right to. We need a picture of space lizards or like the Velociraptor doing the perfectly balanced meme. Timeline, perfectly balanced, as all things should be. But just to explain the connection between the Loki series and the Eternals characters of the Eternals movie, he's not directly connected to those characters himself, but Thor, Odin, the other Asgardians are long-lived enough that Odin, for example, would have witnessed the rise of the Eternals and watched them travel around the universe at the behest of the celestial host that created them. Odin, for example, would know everything about the Celestials, their origin story, the greater cosmic entities like Eternity. He kind of started to explain that to Thor and Jane Foster during Thor: The Dark World when he was explaining the Infinity Stones and the origin of the universe as it applied to the Dark Elves. Like when he was talking about the Dark Elves in the MCU existing in the void of nothingness before the Big Bang. They'll dig into more of that backstory during the Eternals movie when they explain where the Celestials came from. They were created by Eternity, but the current version of Eternity was born during the Big Bang. And just to clarify, Eternity is sort of the living embodiment of the entire multiverse. But everybody post all your theories in the comments below. Do you think that the TVA will wind up coming off as kind of like S.W.O.R.D. during WandaVision, themselves kind of being the antagonists? All my Loki episodes are going to start posting in a couple weeks when it premieres, so make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel. We're also supposed to get a Spider-Man 3 No Way Home trailer sometime soon. They might wind up dropping it sometime next week because Tom Holland's birthday is next week. We'll just wait for Tom Holland to leak all that footage, totally on purpose. Everyone, click here for my full video for Kit Harington's Black Knight character in the Eternals trailer and his future in the MCU, and click here for my larger, full Eternals trailer video and Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys tonight.